Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 1202 of the Juicebox Podcast. We're calling today's guest Stephanie. She's 33 years old. She was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when she was 3. I'm not going to give the whole story away here, but Stephanie grew up in an abusive household. She's had a lot of trouble. That led her to foster care, where she met people who got into more trouble, and eventually she ended up in prison. Nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan. When you place your first order for AG1 with my link, you'll get 5 free travel packs and a free year's supply of vitamin D. Drink ag1.com/juicebox. My 40% off offer at CozyEarth.com ends in June of 2024, so hurry up and get over there to save 40% off of your entire order. Use the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout. I'll get back to you when I know what the offer goes to after June. And if you have type 1 diabetes or are the caregiver of someone with type 1 and you're a U.S. resident, please go to t1dexchange.org/juicebox and complete the survey. You will be helping with type 1 diabetes research when you complete the survey at t1dexchange.org/juicebox. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by Touched by Type 1, touchedbytype1.org, and find them on Facebook and Instagram. Touched by Type 1 is an organization dedicated to helping people living with type 1 diabetes, and they have so many different programs that are doing just that. Check them out at touchedbytype1.org. I forgot to tell you that their big event is coming up, and I'm going to be speaking at it. The tickets are free. It happens in Orlando. Touchedbytype1.org. Go to the programs tab and click on annual conference. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by the Dexcom G7, made for all types of diabetes. Dexcom G7 can be used to manage type 1, type 2, and gestational diabetes. You're going to see the speed, direction, and number of your blood sugar right on your receiver or smartphone device. Dexcom.com/juicebox. Today's episode is sponsored by Medtronic Diabetes, a company that's bringing people together to redefine what it means to live with diabetes. Later in this episode, I'll be speaking with Jalen. He was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at 14. He's 29 now. He's going to tell you a little bit about his story. And then later at the end of this episode, you can hear my entire conversation with Jalen. To hear more stories with Medtronic Champions, go to medtronicdiabetes.com/juicebox or search the hashtag Medtronic Champion on your favorite social media platform.
Okay, so my name is Stephanie.
Stephanie, you have type 1 diabetes?
Yes, I do.
For how long?
I got diagnosed when I was 3, so that was 1994.
1994. Hold on. 2004, 14, 24, 30 years ago. You're 33?
Yeah.
Look at me. All right. Pretty proud of myself counting by tens.
Right.
I could probably have done that all the way up to 100.
Right.
You've had diabetes for a very long time, but you're on this show today for something pretty specific. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions about your diabetes, then we're going to get to the specific topic.
Okay.
Obviously, you're diagnosed at 3. You probably don't remember much about it.
No.
Was your care, 33 years ago, were you like regular and MPH? Were you on a sliding scale? How did you manage in the beginning?
When I first started, I was on NPH and R, and I did that until Humalog came out, and that kind of changed the game for me. I think I was 10 when I first started it.
Okay.
My diet changed. I could eat different things. My mom was way less restrictive because of that 30-minute active insulin.
Yeah. So you, for the first 7 years, till you're about 10 years old or so, you were just eating on a schedule. Like we eat lunch at this time. Were you doing the exchange diet, or how did they have it worked out?
Yeah, I did do the exchange diet. My mom would count out my McDonald's fries for me. It was pretty terrible, but I didn't know anything different until I changed to Humalog. So.
Okay. And then you could suddenly count carbs and just decide what to eat and cover it. It's a big deal for you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
How was your management returns? How was your A1Cs, like your health?
It was really off and on. Puberty was trash. My A1C, I think the worst it ever got was 13. And like, me and my parents were fighting all the time. Like, they told me that I wasn't going to live to be 25 if I kept up doing what I was doing.
Oh.
So it was pretty rough until I got into my 20s.
Yeah, Stephanie, that sucks. You at 13 years old were living with parents who were telling you to your face, you're going to die. You're not doing a good job taking care of yourself.
Yes.
How did that impact you?
Well, I thought I was going to die before I was 25. So then when I turned 25, I was kind of like, well, what do I do now?
Surprised to be alive?
Yeah.
Were your parents helping you with your management and you weren't listening? Or were they just like, how come you can't figure this out?
It was more of how come you can't figure this out?
All right. So, Stephanie, I'm going to ask you a difficult question.
Okay.
Are your parents still alive? If they're dead, it would be easier, but go ahead.
Yes, they're still alive.
They're still alive. Are they quality people?
They have gotten better as time has gone on. I think the older you get, the more calm you get.
Okay. How were they when they were younger?
I would not have picked them.
That's fair. Given a choice, these were not your choice.
Yes.
Okay. So are we talking about verbal abuse? Are we talking about lack of intelligence? Are we talking about drinking, drugs? What are we dealing with?
There was a lot of verbal aggression. Kind of towards the end, there was some pretty significant physical abuse. So when I hit puberty, my hormones, my diabetes, everything just kind of went off the rail.
Yeah.
Right. So they didn't know how to handle it. They just thought I was like a shitty teenager.
Mm-hmm.
It got pretty bad. And actually the state got involved and I ended up in foster care.
Somebody was hitting you at home?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, like for reasons, like, did you know it was coming? Was it like varied and just variable? Or was it like if you did something, said something, that's how you were punished?
Mostly it was if I did something, said something, but like it kind of got out of hand. Like there got to a point where like I was scared to leave my room because I didn't know what was waiting, you know? So
somebody might just for no reason at all strike you.
Yeah.
Can I ask you, are we talking about like a backhand or a full-on assault? Did it last long?
My dad never punched me. He never like balled up his fist and like punched me, but there was definitely slapping, hitting, thrown down the stairs one time.
Wow. You're 33 now. Do you have kids?
I do have kids.
Okay. Is there anything that you remember from your childhood that rose to the level of being hit like that?
No.
Like you didn't come back in the house with a shotgun and heroin and he smacked you or something like that. Is what I'm saying.
No.
Okay. So this is just general everyday stuff. Was your mom as bad or was it mostly him? Dexcom G7 offers an easier way to manage diabetes without finger sticks. It is a simple CGM system that delivers real-time glucose numbers to your smartphone, your smartwatch, and it effortlessly allows you to see your glucose levels and where they're headed. My daughter is wearing a Dexcom G7 right now, and I can't recommend it enough. Whether you have commercial insurance, Medicare coverage, or no CGM coverage at all, Dexcom can help you. Go to my link, dexcom.com/juicebox, and look for that button that says Get a Free Benefits Check. That'll get you going with Dexcom. When you're there, check out the Dexcom Clarity app or the Follow. Did you know that people can follow your Dexcom? Up to 10 people can follow you. Right now, I'm following my daughter, but my wife is also following her. Her roommates at school are following her. So I guess Arden's being followed right now by 5 people who are concerned for her health and welfare. And you can do the same thing. School nurses, your neighbor, people in your family, everyone can have access to that information if you want them to have it. Or if you're an adult and you don't want anyone to know, you don't have to share with anybody. It's completely up to you. Dexcom.com/juicebox. Links in the show notes. Links at juiceboxpodcast.com. And when you use my link to learn about Dexcom, you're supporting the podcast.
My mom was more complicit and she didn't like stand up for me. So that's like.
I got you. She didn't hit you, but she didn't step in either.
Right.
Do you think he ever hit her?
Because they're still alive, I'm not going to answer that.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll assume your mom didn't think it was safe for her to step in.
Probably.
Okay. Well, so they told you were going to die if you didn't figure it out. They didn't help you figure it out. And then if anything happened, or even maybe nothing happened, you were under assault and you got out of there pretty quickly.
It took me actually 2 years of contacting CPS, DCFS to like actually get out of there.
How old were you when you had to contact the state and say, you need to get me out of my house?
I started when I was 14 and I didn't actually get out until I was 16.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Oh, hell. All right. Can I ask a difficult question? Is your dad's intelligence in question here? His mental stability?
No, my dad he's like a one of the most extreme, like Gen X. If you like put all the Gen X's in a pool and you're like, oh, this is what a Gen X is, that's him. He had a rough childhood, and not to excuse his behavior, but he never learned how to deal with his anger.
Okay.
And then I was just like an obstacle that wouldn't immediately comply with what he said.
Right.
So his response to that was violence.
So you were either just being a kid or your diabetes wasn't going the right way. Any of these things could make him frustrated or angry, and that was the response. Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay. So when you get out at 16, you get into foster care?
Yep. I was in like 4 different foster homes in the first 6 months. And then like no one really wanted to keep me because no one understood the diabetes. Like it scared them.
Yeah.
And then I was in group homes, and it was kind of the same thing. Like they had nurses on staff, but this is, 2006, 2007, and no one knew what the heck I was talking about.
Okay. So they didn't understand diabetes. You probably even weren't the best person to explain. Like you could have explained to them how to keep you alive, but you probably couldn't even explain like good care, right?
I mean, I knew carb counting. It was just that like no one trusted me. Like I was in this place, so I must be a bad kid, know?
I see. And up until then, you hadn't done anything questionable, like legally?
No. Nope.
Were you drinking?
Mm-mm.
Smoking?
Nope.
Smoke cigarettes? You smoke weed? Anything like that?
Nothing.
You were just...
I didn't start smoking cigarettes until I was actually 18. And I didn't start drinking until I was like 22.
Interesting. Do you see your parents now?
Yeah, I see them kind of often now. Like I said, with their age, they've gotten more tolerable.
That's not the way anybody wants to be described. You're tolerable now. Wow. Okay. Wow. Foster care, you bounced around?
Yeah, I ended up in a residential treatment center. And it's so in the state I was in, they have like a tier system. So tier 1 is like regular foster care. Tier 2 is like group homes and stuff. So tier 3 was like the highest care, supervision, whatever. And I ended up in the tier 3 because of the diabetes mostly. And then also at that point, I had developed behavioral issues.
Yeah. I mean, I'm waiting for that to happen. Like it's got to happen, right? So behavioral issues like...
I was running away. Like I didn't have access to my insulin while I was in state care. So I would just run away without my insulin and get really sick. And so it was looked at as like a self-harming, suicidal thing. And then eventually I did develop self-harming and suicidal behaviors.
Yeah. Your parents were not alcoholics or drug addicts?
As far as I know, no.
Okay. What kind of financial situation were they in? Would you call yourself middle class, upper class, lower? Like, where did you fall?
I would say middle class. Like when I was much younger, we would have been lower class. But as I got older, we kind of like made more money and stuff.
Did you live in a home that they owned? Did you rent?
Yeah.
You did?
Yeah.
They owned a home on its own property?
Yep.
Yeah. Drove a car that was newer, had a job, that kind of stuff?
Yep.
Okay. Were they professionals or blue collar? It doesn't matter. I'm just asking questions.
My dad was blue collar. He's been a truck driver for like 30, 40 years at this point.
Okay. Was he even there every day?
For quite a while, he was only home on weekends. And then as I got older, he took different like truck driving jobs. So he was home more often.
Lucky you. Okay. I'll be home more often. No.
Right.
Don't do that.
Right.
Yeah, Jesus. All right. So now you are actually self-harming. Cutting. What are you doing?
Yep.
Yeah.
Cutting, abusing my insulin. Pretty much every time I tried to kill myself, I would just overdose on my insulin.
Okay.
And that was like my thing. I would just, in my head, I would just fall asleep and never wake up, you know?
Yeah. And how many times do you think you tried that?
4 or 5.
What are you trying to escape at that point?
At that point, it was more just the idea that I didn't belong anywhere. No one loved me. I was like bad. I was just a bad person.
Gotcha. They offered you therapy in group home, but did it help?
No, because no one really was like me. No one had literally a terminal illness that they were fighting every day against. Like, how could they understand, you know?
Yeah, I see. Well, did you ever abuse the insulin in the other way? Did you ever just not use it at all? Or did you always go with, hey, I'm going to take a shot at?
I never thought of that. Like, I never even thought of that as a possibility. Like, it just never occurred to me because, like, being high was so awful. Like, why would I pick that, you know?
Either I'm going to be comfortable or I'm getting out of this, one or the other.
Yeah.
Do you think you really wanted to die?
No, I didn't. Like, looking back, if you'd asked me at that moment, I absolutely did. But looking back, no, I just wanted someone to care about me.
Yeah. Okay. How long are you in that home for?
I was in the residential until 2009.
How old were you?
So about 3 years. I was 18 or 19 when I left.
Did they basically street you? They tell you got to go?
They put me in a different facility. They're called transitional living placements. So kind of like a halfway house, but for foster kids, right? So everyone there was between 17 and 21.
Were you being educated while you were there?
You mean like school?
Yeah.
If you could call it that, yeah.
Is it more like summer school for kids who couldn't add? Like they just made you do something?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, kind of. I was always like really ridiculously smart. So for me, like going to those schools was just kind of getting babysat.
Yeah. And you could just figure your way through it, but you weren't really building skills or learning.
No. No.
You weren't moving towards like you could go to college if like nobody was talking like that to you, right?
No.
Okay.
Nope.
What was your expectation in those 3 years? Like, what did you think your life was going to be when you became an adult?
I honestly did not think about it.
Okay. So more day-to-day survival.
Yep.
Okay. Was that needed? Were the other kids a cause for your concern about your safety?
Oh yeah, definitely. And they were all like, everyone there had mental health issues. Like everyone there had been through some, you know?
Mm-hmm. Have you ever kept in touch with any of them?
Actually, yeah. Quite a bit of them.
Do they make it out?
No, none of us made it out. So what I mean by that is every single person that I grew up with has either died or gone to prison.
No exceptions.
Every single one of us, no exceptions. And I thought I was the exception until like 2 years ago.
So 2 years ago, how old are your children?
My children are 11, 6, and now 1. I've had a child since I got out of prison.
Okay. 11, 6, now 1. Not the same fathers or yes, the same fathers?
My 2 older ones have the same father.
Okay.
My younger one does not.
How old were you when you had your first?
I was 21, I believe.
Okay. All right. So you get out, you get put into the halfway house for adults, and now it's get a job time or latch onto a guy time? This episode is sponsored by Medtronic Diabetes. MedtronicDiabetes.com/juicebox. And now we're going to hear from Medtronic champion Jalen.
I was going straight into high school, so it was a summer heading into high school.
Was that particularly difficult?
Unimaginable. I missed my entire summer. So I was going to a brand new school. I was around a bunch of new people that I had not been going to school with. So it was hard trying to balance that while also explaining to people what type 1 diabetes was. My hometown did not have an endocrinologist. So I was traveling over an hour to the nearest endocrinologist for children. So, outside of that, I didn't have any type of support in my hometown.
Did you try to explain to people, or did you find it easier just to stay private?
I just held back. I didn't really like talking about it. It felt like it was just a repeating record where I was saying things and people weren't understanding it. And I also was still in the process of learning it. So I just kept it to myself, didn't really talk about it.
Did you eventually find people in real life that you could confide in?
I never really got the experience until after getting to college. And then once I graduated college, it's all I see. You can easily search Medtronic Champions. You see people that pop up and you're like, wow, look at all this content. And I think that's something that motivates me. I started embracing more, how I live with type 1 diabetes.
To hear Jalen's entire conversation, stay till the very end. MedtronicDiabetes.com/juicebox to hear more stories from the Medtronic champion community.
Both.
Okay.
So I actually only stayed at that placement for like 6 weeks and then I ran away.
Okay.
So they allowed you to have a job there. So I worked a job and I thought it was great. And then I got fired and I don't know why still. But then I ended up with my first paycheck and I'd never in my life gotten a paycheck before, but I got like $600 and I was like, oh, sweet. I can be free now. I can run away and buy a house and whatever. Like
yeah.
I just didn't know.
Yeah, you take that 600 and invest
right.
half of it for the future and buy a house with the other half.
Right. It was everything to me,
Yeah.
But so I went and I bought a phone and then I called a friend that I knew from my residential placement and they came and picked me up in the town I was in and I was gone.
Do you start doing drugs or you just start, what do you do?
Nope.
No
drugs. I just kind of was a bum. I just kind of I slept till noon and I wandered around town, walking around with my friends. I just didn't really have a direction at all.
Who finances that? Because you're somewhere, you're indoors somewhere, right? And you're eating. So
right.
How does that all get financed?
So one of the friends that I had from the residential, she had a boyfriend, grown man, older person that she should never have been with, that was really just paying for her and whoever she brought to the house.
Are we calling this a sugar daddy?
Yeah.
Was he trading sex for money with her, basically?
With her, yeah. And I'm sure that spread to other girls, but I was gone before that ever happened to me.
Okay. Could it have happened to you if you stayed?
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay. So you meet a guy and
yep.
And you had 2 kids with him and they're spread out a little bit. So you move in, you're making a life?
I ended up going to college after I left that girl and her man. And I got a Pell Grant, right? Because I was in foster care. So I was automatically qualified. And then they paid my tuition and I ended up with $3,000 that I got to just keep, right? And I was so excited. And I ended up renting an apartment. When I ended up meeting my kid's dad, I had already been with someone and we were living together and I had gotten pregnant with him. That did not work out. So then when we separated, I met my kid's dad, my older kid's dad.
So wait, you said it didn't work. Did you have a failed pregnancy?
No, what happened was when I gave birth to my oldest child, because I was in foster care in the state that I gave birth in, CPS, DCFS came and took my first child. And basically they said because I didn't have parents, I wouldn't know how to be a good parent. And they had the right basically to come and take my baby.
How old were you then?
I was 19.
19. And did you have to sign anything when they did that?
No, I actually went to court to fight them about it for 22 months.
Have you seen the baby since then?
No.
No. Just given up for adoption.
Yeah, they ended up letting the foster parent that was taking care of him adopt him.
Okay. Well, listen, this is going to keep being terrible, right? We need to tell people. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Let's do a little bit of this for people so they can make it through. Are you okay now?
I am okay now.
Okay,
yes.
Good. Keep that in mind while she's telling the story so that the pit of your stomach doesn't just like burn through like hot lava, because that's what's happening to me while I'm talking here.
Yes, yes,
yeah.
I know.
So, okay. Oh, geez. All right. So you're out. You've got this $3,000 that you've got in an apartment with. $3,000. You probably thought like this will last me 10 years. And
oh yeah, absolutely. I was so excited. I was a little more like world savvy at this point.
Okay.
But
not
like,
much.
No, not a lot. I knew it would like last me forever, but I knew I couldn't buy a house with it.
Yeah. So when you look back at yourself, do you just see a person who wasn't ever just shown what life was?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because I thought I was so special. I thought like, well, I know how to vacuum and I know how to clean dishes. And a lot of girls there just didn't, you know? So I thought I like was going to be fine, you know?
It's interesting, isn't it? Like we can always find somebody doing a little worse than us and then go, I'm great. And we never think like, who knows more than we do? Like probably nobody.
Right.
I can vacuum and do dishes. Yeah. So, okay. So you're in your apartment, you meet a guy and you guys have a kid pretty quickly, right? Because you're like 21 when you have the next one.
Yes.
Right.
So I was actually still in court fighting for my first child when I got pregnant with my second child. And basically what it came down to was I was, 6 months pregnant, and the state, they filed for a termination of my parental rights. And my caseworker took me into a little room and she said, basically, if I sign this termination paper and let my first child go, they won't come after my second child. But if I don't, then they'll be at the hospital waiting for me.
Wow. Even though you were with somebody and you had a home.
Yep.
Do you know what the basis was for that? Were they just trying to strong arm you into doing the first thing and stopping?
They were, and they used this, I can't remember what it's called, but it was basically potential for neglect was like a charge that they brought against me.
It sounds like the statement.
So nothing had happened yet, but there was a potential that my child would be neglected because of my history.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you feel like they strong armed you to get you out of the court case?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
So you did that begrudgingly. And
Yes.
how devastating was that, by the way?
I don't think I showered for like 3 weeks. I don't think I got up off my couch for like 2 weeks.
So in that moment, like signing that paper made it feel like like you were in the mall and somebody just snatched your baby and left with it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very much so. The wild thing is I was pregnant with my second child. Actually, my mom went to court with me when it was time to sign the papers. And she was very supportive, and I love her for going with me. But she helped me pack up my house, and I put everything I could fit into my little Nissan Altima, and I drove from the state I was in to the state I'm in now, which was about 10 hours at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I have never been back ever.
Wow.
It's crazy because after my child was born, my older child that I have now, about 6 months later, so I had forwarded all my mail to a friend I had in Chicago so that like the state couldn't track me or whatever, right? So he was opening all my mail to make sure like I got everything I needed to get.
Yeah.
So he called me one day and he's like, hey, you got a letter from DCFS. And I was like, what the do they want? Right.
Yeah.
So he opened it and it was a letter saying that it was basically an apology letter So there was a lady who went to court against that like charge, that potential for neglect or potential for harm or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And she won in the state Supreme Court. And so they had to vacate all the charges for that specific potential for harm.
Yeah.
So my thing was vacated, and it was basically like, oh, hey, sorry, we should have never done this.
Yeah. We apologize for snatching your baby from you. Yeah.
Go f- yourself. Yeah, basically.
How long after that happened was the letter?
Like a year, not even.
Did you think about going back and trying to get the baby or no?
I did go back. I talked to a couple lawyers. Basically, nobody wanted to take on the state. And I ended up figuring out what law office that lady had gone through. And they couldn't help me either because I was like going after like a specific child and not like a statutory issue.
Yeah. They were able to help with the bigger picture, but not something specific.
Right.
Interesting.
Right. So it was kind of a dead end. And that, I mean, to this day, that like tears me apart, you know?
I imagine. Steph, are you still harming yourself at this point when you're 21 years old?
No.
No. That stopped when
I really got out on my own and started just living life.
Okay. You don't think about it. It doesn't occur to you?
Nope, not anymore.
I'm going to say something strange. You're not bipolar?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I was diagnosed with bipolar at the time, but the therapist that I've been seeing says I don't fit the criteria.
Gotcha. By the way, that guess is just because I've made this podcast for so long. Like it's Monday. Woo!
Yeah.
Let's go. Hold on a second. I had a long weekend. You woke me right up. Don't worry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So your second baby arrives. You're with the guy. Are you in a safe relationship or did you somehow pick your dad?
Actually, let me add to this story a little bit
Go ahead.
with that little stomach dropping feeling. So when
You're like, hold on a second. I can hit you one more time in the gut. Go ahead.
So when I was still in the state where my first child was, my partner that I was with ended up going to prison. So, and I think that's why my mom showed up to help me with the papers so I wouldn't have to be alone. He was gone. Like he was already in prison. So when I went to the new state, it was actually where his family was. And he was gone until my baby was about 6 months old, and then he got out.
What was he in for?
Theft or burglary or something like that.
Gotcha. And then he gets out. Does he come to be with you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And then you have another baby at some point.
Yes.
Okay. So are you living what you would consider to be a fairly normal life between his release and the arrival of your next child, for example?
Yeah, more or less. He went back a couple other times and I just never let him go, you know?
Oh, he missed it? or he was was he bad at being a criminal? Which is it?
Actually, yes.
Oh.
Yep. And it's so funny because
I don't know why that's funny, but yeah, sorry.
When I finally got like arrested and charged and everything, he was so like excited. He's like, "You're finally going to go down for whatever." And I was like, "Because I'm not bad at it like you." Okay.
He's involved in theft, stuff like that, burglary.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
You're doing it too, but you're not getting caught?
Correct.
And he was happy you got arrested and were going away because jealousy?
I finally got caught. Yeah.
He was actually jealous that you were better at being a criminal than he was.
Yes.
I love people. No, I'm gonna make this podcast for the rest of my life just to hear these stories. Okay. What were you doing?
So, I mean, I was like helping him. He had kind of like a klepto issue. So I was kind of helping him steal stuff. But really what I ended up going to jail for, and like I lost my eligibility for Medicaid when I got a job. right?
Okay.
And I was so scared. I was like, oh God, I'm going to die. I can't afford insulin. And this is like that time when there was no cap on insulin and it was like $300, $400. And I was like, I can't live like this and I can't go rob a pharmacy. So what am I going to do? Right. So I ended up lying to the Medicaid office. I told them I wasn't working. I told them like I had no income. And like, so prior to that, I had changed my social security number, right? They changed my social security number. They were supposed to put my disability and my benefits and everything on the new number, but they didn't, right?
Okay.
And it was my responsibility to tell them, which originally I was like, hey, I think you guys messed up. But then they were like, oh, it takes a minute. Don't worry about it. And I just never called them again, which that was not like a mistake. I intentionally did not call them again.
Right.
Like, let's be clear about that.
So that you could collect the money on both social security numbers.
Right.
Right.
So I was working on one and like making money and whatever. And I was still getting Medicaid and my disability on the other number. Right. At some point, I actually ended up telling on myself, but at some point I got caught. And they canceled my disability. They canceled my Medicaid. They canceled everything. And I was, at that point, I had known it was coming. Like I could just kind of tell that they were like on to me, you know?
The jig is up.
Yeah, basically.
Gotcha.
And it took about 6 months for them to like really like cut me off of everything. But at that time, I ended up going on to Obamacare and I had a low deductible and everything was fine. But like that whole time I spent like, I'm going to run out of insulin and I'm going to die. Like, I was scared.
But Stephanie, your life, like at that point with two smaller children, like when two kids get up in the morning and they're like, hey, we're going to go to school now. You're like, oh, go to school. Mommy's going to go to work. And then you go to work and go like shoplift, or like, do you actually have a job? Like, how are you, do you understand? I'm trying to understand what your day-to-day is like in that time.
Okay. So for a long time before I got the new social security number, I was not working. I was on disability. Right. I didn't actually do that. The state that I was in foster care and did that for me. And I didn't know about it until I applied for like food stamps and they were like, oh, you have income. And I was like, what do you mean? And then after that, the state ended up giving it to me instead of to themselves. But like, that's a whole other issue. So before I got the new number, I was on disability and I spent my days like really just not doing anything. Like I didn't go to work. I didn't like go to school. I just did stuff at home, I guess.
So you sent the kids off to school and then you just hung out.
Yeah, basically.
Gotcha.
I'm super great at baking because that's pretty much all I did.
That's the one thing I'm good. I'm really good at baking. So what about Klepto Charlie? Was he out working or was he doing something?
Yeah, he was out working. That was like his working was like he was addicted to it. And after he stopped stealing, he just put everything he had into his job. Okay.
So stealing, getting caught, doing short stints, finally decides I'm just going to get a job and do it right, puts his effort into that, was a good guy, got up, went to work every day.
Yeah, basically. Okay. We had separated after, like 4 months after my daughter was born. So when the police finally came knocking, I was in my own apartment at that point.
Separated right after your 6-year-old was born. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Why did you separate?
He was a serial cheater. And I was always like, I never felt good enough my whole life. You know, I never felt like anyone would love me, like childhood trauma, whatever. So I like dealt with it. And then I'd like try and dish it back, but I sucked at being a cheater. So it just got to a point where I was like, I can't live like this and I don't deserve this.
While he was cheating, you knew he was?
Yeah.
So he wasn't a good thief. He wasn't a good cheater. Was he trying or did he know that you would take it?
Honestly, I don't know.
Okay.
I think at times he was trying to hide it, but after a certain point of me like constantly taking him back. He got the picture.
Okay. Do you have more self-confidence now?
A little. I mean, not a lot, but I'm not going to let someone sleep around on me.
Gotcha.
So I guess a little.
Have you tried like talk therapy or anything like that?
Yeah. I've had a therapist for like 10 years.
Does it help?
In ways, yeah.
Okay.
Like there's some stuff I don't know how to fix, and I don't know if it will ever fix. I just have to kind of work around it,
Gotcha. Okay. So you got pinched for fraud, right?
Yes.
They didn't give you a chance to pay them back? They just locked you up, or you couldn't pay them back?
I couldn't pay them back. Originally, they were saying I owed like $300,000 in medical fraud.
Jesus, did you? Jeez, okay. That
insulin
is expensive.
Hospital stays.
No.
This is the cost of insulin. This is the cost of all my pump supplies. This everything, right? Over the course of like 3 or 4 years.
Okay. Sounds like they marked it up a little bit. Okay, I got that.
They did.
Yeah.
And my attorney and we got it down to like 56.
Right. But there's no world where you're coming up with that. So then you have to, again, just like with losing your first child, like they're like, look, you can pay us or go to jail. So what kind of like jail/prison were you in? What was the level of security there? What kind of people were you with?
So my lawyer was like a public defender, but he was great. He argued with the judge for not letting me go to county because there were 2 incidents in my county jail where diabetics had died. Oh. So he fought really hard to keep me out of there, and it worked. So I ended up...
I'm sorry. I'm going to cut you off for 1 second. I apologize.
Okay.
Look, I'm not saying you didn't do the thing, but it's a financial crime, right? Like if you were a white collar criminal, you know what I mean? So there's no consideration for the fact that you have 2 small children?
No.
They go with the father?
Nope.
No, I was going to say they're not going to put him with him either, right? So where do your kids go?
My kids ended up going to a friend of mine. They were registered foster parents, so they were like automatically going to be cleared. And they were so good to me, like throughout my whole process. They were really wonderful.
So I'm glad that a friend stepped up for you, but isn't it funny that no one sees the cyclical nature of this? Like you're clearly in this position because of your lack of love in an upbringing, the foster system and what that process does to you, and then they're going to put your kids in foster care.
Actually, because I found someone to take them, even though they were foster parents, we were able to keep my kids out of foster care. Thank God.
Yeah. But still, they took you away from your kids, right? Like it's just restarting the problem again. Like it is. Yeah. And so I don't know, like at some point, like you would think that the 50 grand wouldn't, I'm not excusing what you did, but do you think the 50 grand wouldn't be as important as not creating 2 of you 10 years from now? Right. You know what I mean? Right. Like, yeah. And let's be clear. You love your kids, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
You're not hitting them every time you get upset?
Nope.
No. Okay. So they're in a better situation than you were in.
Absolutely.
Do you think they will grow up better than you did?
I hope so.
You're trying for that.
I am trying. I can't say because they've really been through it, especially with me being gone for as long as I was gone,
Yeah. How long were you gone for?
But my hope is that they're better.
Yeah. And trust me, if you keep trying, they will be. But how long were you gone for? How long did they put you in jail for the 50 grand? What's 50 grand cost you in time?
2 years.
2 years. Okay.
Yep.
So like a little over $2,000 a month basically is what your debt is worth to them. Now,
right, but there's no such thing as debtor's jail, so I still have to pay it.
Oh, wait, hold on a second. You didn't trade the money for the time?
I couldn't. It's illegal to do that.
So they took the 2 years and they took the kids and then they let you back out and told you go find a way to give us this $50,000.
Yep.
What do you want, a payment plan of like $200 a month or something like that?
Yep. And they take my taxes and any gains that I have until it's paid off.
What did it cost to lock you up for 2 years?
That is a great question. I tried to figure it out while I was locked up, and it ended up being like $5,000 or $6,000 a month.
I love government. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, why not put you on house arrest? Like, you know what I mean? Like, throw an ankle, like, make your life miserable, but let you stay with your kids.
Right.
The locking you up for 2 years is to punish you, to keep you. You would think there'd be a way to punish you that wouldn't cost the state $5,000 a month on the $2,000 a month they're trying to get back from you. So they spent, hold on a second, 3, 6, 9, 12, 8, 36, 60. They spent $70,000 to one day get $50,000 back from you.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, great. I'm glad everybody's making sense. Also, do you think you're a criminal if you're not financially incentivized to be one?
Yeah, I think so.
You would have been one way or the other.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if I said to you,
I mean,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
So I was going to say, like, if I went back then and I said, Stephanie, listen, instead of this nickel and dime stuff you're doing with the guy and defrauding the government and everything, here's a job. And this job will pay all of your bills. You'll have a little money left over. You'll have a place to live, all this stuff. Just go to work every day. You think you'd be like, I'm just going to steal stuff?
No, I don't think so. But my issue at that point was, so I had always been on the disability, and I didn't, no one sat there and was like, hey, this is how you go get a job. Hey, this is how you live like a normal person. And I just didn't know.
You're basically 16 in your head your whole life.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
And then when I got this new social security number, I was talking to him and I was like, hey, I can get a job now, right? And he was like, yeah, if you want. And I was like, will you show me how? You know, I just didn't know.
Yeah. So you're being abused at 14. You somehow spend 2 years getting yourself out of that physical harm. And then you get flopped into foster care. And what do they usually say? Like, what a therapist say? You kind of get froze intellectually at the spot where you have the trauma, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So you're basically 14 to 16 in your decision-making skills, but you're standing around, you're 23, 24, 25 years old.
Exactly. Yes.
Can I ask a difficult question?
Sure.
When you don't have, by the way, I don't know that one of these questions hasn't been difficult, but when you don't have money and you're stealing to make a living, how do you not put more effort into not being pregnant?
That is a great question.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I'm very interested in the answer.
Yes. I spent pretty much the time between my oldest and my middle child, I spent on an IUD.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I was very committed to not having another child. And then I honestly, and I hope she never hears this, but I honestly had my daughter so that my husband would stay.
Oh, you popped the IUD out and got pregnant on purpose?
Yeah, I mean, he knew I had taken it out. He actually took it out for me. But my hope was that if we had a more nuclear family, that he would want to be with me more.
Not cheat on you. Not cheat on you and be around and that kind of stuff.
Right.
And instead, once she was there, the pressure hit him and he bolted.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, technically I left him, but he was he had a job where they close at 10 and he was gone until 1 a.m. He just didn't want to be with me. And I was so heartbroken because it didn't work. My plan didn't work.
Yeah. When the baby didn't fix it, you were like, oh, okay, I'm gone.
Yeah, basically.
Gotcha. I'm going to be crass for a second and I apologize ahead of time. But when this is your life, right, and you're not doing much of anything else, you're just basically stealing, cooking, sleeping, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So it's basically the life an 18-year-old would have if they had somebody not watching them.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. All right. I'm getting all this. And he grew up in a similar way?
No.
Nope. He just had an affliction with the wanting to steal.
Yeah. Yep.
And being a serial cheater.
Yes. Yep.
God, I'd love to talk to one of the women that cheated with him. Like, how do I talk you into being my other person?
He told them I was awful. I've actually talked to a few of them. He told them how horrible I was and how I neglect him and I don't have sex with him and we were getting a divorce.
And they think they're saving him.
Yep.
Are they girls with low self-esteem too?
Yes. And a lot of them were like barely 18.
Oh, so he was, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. All right. Hold on a second. Let me just wash that over me for a second before I ask you how prison was. So,
okay.
Oh my God. We all need a minute. We should put a break here. What if I just played music for a couple minutes, then we came back and did the rest of it? Oh my God. All right. Hold on. I'm okay. This didn't happen to me. And I feel like I'm like crazed by it. All right. So you surrender yourself and they give you time, I hope, to get your kids set up and everything before you have to surrender yourself?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And they don't put you in county because county's killed a couple of type 1s. So where do you end up?
I actually had to self-report to the prison itself, and that was in Texas. And I live like almost at the top of the country, and I had to fly to Texas.
Yeah, there's a little Minnesota or something in your voice, right? Wisconsin.
Yes, there is.
Yeah, I can hear it. Okay.
Yeah.
That's not.
I resent that a little bit.
Oh, listen. I like that. That's the one thing you've been upset by so far. You're like, hey, don't tell me that. But you didn't. That's where the guy's family was. You were originally in the Dakotas, then you went there, and then you had to go to Texas for prison.
Yes.
Okay. Do you think people are like, wow, Scott really does listen while he's doing this? Because
I think so.
I have to tell you, it's a lot to keep in your head. Because I'm basically trying to absorb your entire life so that I can ask good questions about it. And I swear to you, my body temperature is higher right now. Like I'm thinking like, plus it's upsetting. You know what I mean? So, okay. So now you go to Texas. I do want to ask, how hard is it to voluntarily give yourself up to be, because you'd have to come get me. I'd be like, look, I know I'm coming. I know I agreed to it, but if you don't come get me, I ain't showing up there. It's like, so like how difficult is that?
Honestly, like, and this might sound crazy, but for me, it was just another thing. It was like just another traumatic thing that was going to happen to me. And I was just used to it, you know? Here's
another thing and another day and whatever.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, don't get me wrong. I cried my face off for like a month. Like when I dropped my kids off at my friend's house, I cried the whole way back. Like, it was hard, but I couldn't have not done it. I was just used to it at that point, you know?
Right. Listen, I dropped my son off in Atlanta after college, and I thought I was going to have a stroke while I was driving away.
Right.
And I was leaving him in an apartment where he had a job, and I was going back to my home, and we could see each other whenever I wanted to. And I was still, you know.
Yeah.
So you didn't visit with your kids the whole time you were in jail, right?
No. I couldn't. They were too far away.
Did anybody visit with you?
No.
Oh, jeez. All right. Is it prison or jail? What should we be calling it?
Prison.
Prison. What was prison like?
So I did not know what to expect. I had never been in county. I had never been on a 24-hour hold. This was like brand new to me, right? And so when I first surrendered, so the prison was on a base. Right. And I'd never been on a base before either. So everything was just really brand new. So they had to call someone from the prison to come and get me. And I'm sitting there and I'm waiting. I don't know if I can walk outside. I don't know what I can do. No one tells you anything. This lady, this really, really angry woman came to get me. And she had me take everything out of my pockets and put it in the garbage. And then she drove me to the prison. And they put you in intake and they check you in and they do an X-ray, which I was not expecting. But so they do an X-ray on you to see if you have like anything that you're trying to hide, I guess. Mm-hmm. And then they put you in the prison clothes and then you have to see a doctor. Right. And I was like, oh, good. So I was on the pump before I went to turn myself in. And about 2 weeks before I went to turn myself in, I put myself back on shots just in case, like, they wouldn't let me keep my pump, right? I had it with me, but just in case. I figured out my dosing and everything with my doctor, and I had been on a pump at that point for like 4 years. So it took a little bit, but we got there. We got all the doses that I needed and everything.
Okay.
But one of the things that the lady wanted me to throw in the garbage was my insulin pens, and I said no, and that made her more angry. But so when I got there, I had to like turn it all over to one of the officers, and then I got to see a doctor. And I was like, oh, good, it's going to be fine. They're going to know I'm diabetic, whatever. So when I told her, I was like, hey, I'm type 1 diabetic. And she was like, okay, so you take pills, right? And I was like, no, ma'am, type 1. So I take insulin. She's like, oh, well, how long have you been on insulin? And I was like, my whole life, right? Since I was 3. And she, for some reason, is still like in her head, it's still type 2.
Yeah.
And I'm like picking that up from the question she's asking me. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to die.
This is it. This is what they told me. I came all the way to Texas. I could have just died at home. Yeah. Oh,
right.
Yeah,
exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Oh, okay. So do you talk her into believing you have type 1? How does that go?
Yes. It took a minute. And I was like, I've been on insulin for 25 years, blah, blah, blah. And she was like, okay, well, we're going to put you on NPH. And I was like,
yeah,
okay, better than nothing, I guess. Thanks.
Right.
But I told her, and I brought a letter from my doctor with me that I watched her throw in the garbage without reading. So they put me on NPH. And then for the R, they didn't put me on like carb counting or anything. They put me strictly on a sliding scale. So I could only take R if my sugars were high. That was it.
Yeah. So you're back to being 3 years old again.
Basically, yeah.
With your diabetes, right?
I was fucking scared. I was scared. So I spent, and I was only getting 1 shot of MPH a day, right? Okay. Even though it's a 12-hour insulin, which it says right on the packaging, 12 hours. So I was spending 12 hours super low and 12 hours super high. Mm-hmm. And I was sick. I was very sick. It took me about a week and a half to go into DKA. And so in prison, they're called sick calls. So if you want to see a doctor, provider, or nurse, or anybody, you have to go to sick call, right? So sick call starts at 6 a.m. and it goes until 8 a.m. And I had just gotten there, so I didn't have like an alarm clock. I didn't have anything. There had been no commissary yet, right? So I'm like asking my cellmates to make sure I'm up so I can go to sick call. And I'm in there every day. And I'm like, listen, I am sick. This is a 12-hour insulin. There's 24 hours in a day. Basic math, people. Come on.
Yeah.
And they did not care. They did not care. They kept sending me away. And I was up there every single day for like a week straight. And the doctor that I had, which there are some people, if I ever see them on the outside, we're going to fight. And that's one of them.
That doctor's one of them. Gotcha. Yeah.
Trash. Mm-hmm. Like he had a fucking ankle bracelet on his ankle. He didn't want to be there either. He was probably doing community service to be there. And he was killing as many people as he possibly could, as quickly as he possibly could. It was disgusting.
You actually think he was a physician who got pinched doing something else and this is how he was paying back?
Yes.
You know what? That would surprise me until I told you that the Cold Wind episode that went up today partially deals with a husband and wife endocrinology team who's selling pills out of their practice.
Yeah, that would not surprise me at all.
Yeah.
And he was like, he did not have an MD. He was like some other kind of doctor. I don't know. But he hated us, all the inmates, and he made it very clear, right? He was very sarcastic. He was very, I'm better than you. But that didn't work on me because like, I'm a genius, like officially, like I have the genius scoring.
What's your IQ?
180.
Oh my God. Okay. All right. So you were able to keep up with what was going on there for sure.
Right.
Yep.
So like he's trying to treat me like I'm slow and I'm actually treating him like he's slow, which pisses him off more. And I probably should have like dialed it back a little bit, but I was pissed.
Okay. Wow.
And so basically there were so much horrible things he did. Like he took an epileptic girl off her seizure medication because he said she was using it to get high and she wasn't actually epileptic. Then he put her on a top bunk, like you can order people onto a top bunk. So she had a seizure on the top bunk, fell off and broke her arm. Right.
No kidding.
And he could have avoided all of that. And he did it on purpose.
Oh, that's crazy. So that's now what you're dealing with. It's not so much like people would want to believe, like, oh, it's this beautiful place where they're trying to take care of people. It's just harder because they're
absolutely not.
Right. It's you're every time you find yourself in a new situation, the levels of people around you kind of match the situation to some degree or another.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Very true.
Is there a point?
So I told him I was diabetic.
Right. Go ahead.
And he made the same assumption that I was type 2. He asked what pills I was on. I said, no, I've been type 1 since I was 3 years old. I don't take pills. I can't take pills. They won't do anything for me. And then he asked what my diet is like. And I just kind of looked at him and I was like, well, I'm in prison. So you kind of know, don't you?
Right. Yeah.
And then he was like, well, if you eat better, your sugars will be better. And you might even not need to take insulin. And I was like, what the is wrong with you? Like, eat better prison food, or like you're going to magically cure my diabetes? Which one is it?
Yeah, there's a lot of asks in there that are not actually rooted in any reality. Like, I'm not in charge of the food I'm eating. I eat what I'm given, and that's not how type 1 diabetes works. So, yeah. So
then,
go ahead.
So I got to order a commissary after I had been there for like 4 or 5 days, right? And luckily enough, one of my friends from the town I was in had sent me $200 to just get what I needed to get, right? Mm-hmm. So I ordered 3 orange juices off of commissary in case I had a low blood sugar, right? So then when I'm in sick call and this doctor is looking at my commissary list, he sees these orange juices and he's like, well, you definitely can't order that on commissary. And he put me on like some sort of restriction, some commissary restriction where I could not order food on commissary.
Really? So you couldn't even get low supplies?
No. And I had to pay my cellmates to order stuff for me, which is like common practice. There's like monetary value on things in prison, and that's just how things operate. But the fact that like he had no concept of low blood sugar, like at all,
right,
blew my mind. Like, how many people are you in charge of?
Yeah.
Like,
even the idea that, by the way, if he blocked you from getting the orange juice, that you could just get it in 2 seconds. Like, he was just making it more difficult and expensive. He wasn't stopping you from getting the orange juice.
Right.
Yeah. Gotcha. All right.
So.
God. Okay. This is still like the first week, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So, but I had not figured out like the money exchange thing yet. Like, I figured that out later. But at the time I was like, they really are going to kill me. Yeah. Like, they're actually going to kill me. I'm taking 1 shot of MPH a day. I'm only taking R if my blood sugars are high, which in the second half of the day is the whole time.
Mm-hmm. Are they testing you? How frequently are you being tested?
3 times a day before meals. So basically it's called insulin line.
Yeah.
So you go to the medication window and there's like 400 women and maybe 2 of them are type 1, right?
Yeah.
So everyone goes to insulin line to get their shots or their pills. Okay.
Yeah.
And you have to wait in the line and then you get this like thing that says you went to insulin line, and then you get to go to the chow hall. So you can't go to chow hall until you go to insulin line. Like, you can't skip it.
Gotcha. I just interviewed somebody anonymously who works in assisted living for elderly people, and then a place where people who committed crimes, pretty serious crimes, but they were able to plead like not guilty by reason of insanity, where those people end up, and your care and that is very similar. Like,
it is.
Yeah,
it
so
really
it's the institutional care. Like, I guess it must be what they do. So they're not going to look. I kind of understand. No one's going to sit around with you and say, and I mean, where are they going to get somebody to like really figure out your diabetes? But if you knew how to do it, then why not just put you in the insulin line and then let you take what you needed?
Yeah, well, then because people would abuse it or kill themselves or whatever.
And they wouldn't be able to. Yeah, I see. So there's always going to be a bigger problem that stops someone from actually getting decent care.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
It gets worse, I promise.
Keep going.
So about a week and a half in, I start to get DKA symptoms. I'm doing my best. I'm limiting what I eat, but I have to account for being overdosed on MPH once a day.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm dealing the best I can. And I end up, so in prison, something I didn't know that no one ever like mentioned before in all like prison movies or talking to my ex-husband, like I didn't know anything about it. It's called count. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's where they shut down the entire prison and everyone has to get counted. And they do this 4 or 5 times a day.
Okay.
So during count, you cannot be in the bathroom. You cannot be in the shower. You cannot be doing anything except standing next to your bunk, right? First, they call count. They'll say, count time, rack up, right? So I hear them calling count and I'm in the bathroom throwing up because I'm in DKA, right? And I couldn't rack up. I couldn't go, like I could barely stand up. I was so weak.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm really going to fucking die in here. And I've said this to myself like 50 times a day for the last week and a half, right?
Mm-hmm.
But so I walk out because I don't want to get locked up. In prison, you're like, oh, what can they do? Send me to jail? But yes, there's like a prison inside the prison inside the prison.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to get locked up. And so I come out of the bathroom and I collapsed like right in front of the bathroom. So they had to stop the count for the entire prison to roll me to the medical portion of the prison.
Mm-hmm.
And they like ended up giving me insulin because my sugar was high and giving me ice chips and being like, you're fine. And I was like, fuck you, I'm going to die.
Mm-hmm.
So they did the count with me on the medical side, and then I ended up having to go back. And in the morning, I went to sick call again to this trash doctor who hated me. And I went in and I have a little throw up cup thing in front of me, and I'm throwing up and I'm looking at him when he comes in and I'm like, listen, I'm in DKA, like right now. And he looks at me and he's just nasty. Oh, I hate him. And he's like, well, there's no way you're in DKA because you're not sweating.
Okay.
And I was like, I had called my ex-husband at that time, like before I went to sick call. And I was like, hey, I'm dying. Like, I don't know what you can do, but I need you to know, like, I'm in DKA. I need help, something. He was like trying to call my doctor on the outside to get them to contact the prison or just letting somebody know that somebody out there gave a fuck about me, you know?
Right.
I told the doctor when he said that about the sweating, I was like, listen, I already called my people and they told my doctor out there that you are killing me personally and someone's going to come for you. And it was like an empty threat, but I didn't really give a fuck because I was dying.
Mm-hmm.
He, like, we went back and forth. I threw up on him kind of on purpose. And then I told him, like, oh, if you don't believe me, if you think I'm lying, just check my anion gap then. And he was like, oh, she knows what she's talking about. So he sent me down to get a blood draw. And while the labs were coming back, I was like laying on one of the little stretcher things and I was screaming. I was in so much pain. I couldn't stop screaming. My throat was dry, so my screams sounded like sickly. And I could hear like the other inmates in the hallway talking about how freaked out they were. And I was like, I remember like passing out and I was like, this is it. Like, dear God, tell my kids I love them. I don't want this. And then the next thing I knew, I was in the back of an ambulance and I ended up going to the local hospital there, emergency room hospital, whatever. And they had me like chained to the hospital bed.
Mm-hmm.
And like there were 6 or 7 nurses and doctors that came in to like start working on me. And I was like, it was like relief. I was so happy to see that I was not in there anymore.
Yeah.
And then I spent like 6 days in the actual hospital. Now, remember, I've only been there for 2 weeks.
Right.
So like everyone at the prison is like, oh, we f***ed up, something's wrong. We need to like cover this up real quick. But while this was happening, my ex-husband had contacted my outside doctor here, and my outside doctor had sent like my medication list that I couldn't take NPH, I couldn't take R. I was only supposed to be on Lantus and Humalog, and here were my little chart thingies. And like he sent it all over, and I guess I never saw it, but I asked him about it later. He sent like a very strongly worded like letter that was like, she's been under my care for the last 10 years and she's had nothing but wonderful blood sugars and perfect A1C. So I'm going to know if you did something wrong, basically.
Yeah.
Which I was so grateful for that.
Did that kind of right things? Did they put you on a different treatment course after that, or were you still fighting?
There were two different things that happened that kind of made them get it together. One of them was that letter, and the other was that the Fort Worth hospital refused to send me back to the prison until they got the insulin I needed.
Because they knew you were just going to end up back there.
Right.
In DK again. Your doctor at home and the doctors at the hospital kind of get to, their efforts keep you from going back until the prison's ready to take care of you.
Yes. And I guess because of this situation, the doctor that I hated, that hated me, like he must have gotten in trouble or something, because like he would never see me again. He would always have like a nurse or a practitioner see me instead of him. And he would like sign off on whatever they said.
And was that better for you?
It was better. And then like some other stuff happened, and I ended up getting moved from the general population to the medical like floor, like the inpatient floor. And then once I was there, he tried like taking over my care again, because like, so what happened is I had like this really bad low because my, like the dosing chart. So a long time ago, it would basically be if you're 100 to 125, you take 0 units, right? And if you're 125 to 50, you take 2 units or whatever, right? So on that chart, they would always like give me the insulin I needed for the high end, but I'd be on the low end. So I'd end up low, basically.
I see.
I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. God, it's just, I mean, I believe every word you're saying, and I have no reason to think that it would be any better for some reason, but it's still shocking. You know what I mean? Like, did you just like come up with like a balance at some point that worked, or was the entire 2 years a struggle?
The entire 2 years was a struggle. And I had like compliance issues. So like people would tell me to do stuff and I would just purposely not do it because I was mad at the world or whatever. So I ended up in solitary, like a lot, right? And I fought with officers and I fought with inmates, and I was just mad, you know?
Yeah.
So in solitary, it was like the care was better, like medically, but being in solitary for so long, it like really f***ed with me, you know?
Being just like literally by yourself. So then you get kind of like, did you go back to hurting yourself?
In ways, yeah, but not like, I mean, you couldn't cut yourself, like you didn't have an option, but yeah, in ways.
What about the rest of the prison experience? Was the rest of it good? The medical part? Well, I don't mean, by the way, I didn't mean good, but was like the rest of it more like you expected, aside from the medical aspects of it, or was there horrors? There
were a lot of things that like just didn't add up, right? So you see prison movies on TV and you're like, oh, well, nobody snitches because then they end up murdered. That does not happen. Not in the ones I was in anyway. Like everybody tells everybody's business to everybody, right? Officers included.
Yeah, it's the only thing to do, probably.
Probably.
Yeah.
The money thing was pretty on point. So either you could go into debt and then like buy someone whatever they wanted on commissary as a way to pay the debt. Or some people traded like postage stamps as money.
Because you could write to someone.
Or just because you could like cash them out when you get out.
Oh, really? Oh, so I'm saving money 50 cents at a time on my postage stamps because when I get out, I'm going to be postage stamp rich.
Yeah, I guess. I mean,
Yeah.
when I got out, I tried to take them to the post office, but they wouldn't buy them, but my grocery store would.
No
It was
kidding.
weird.
How much did you make selling your postage stamps at the grocery store?
Like $80.
And you spent 2 years on that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I could put you in a time machine and take you back to the first time you stole something from somebody, do you think you would, with all this knowledge you have, you think you would do it again?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Not a chance.
It's crazy. So that's the thing we were counting on your parents to instill in you during those years when they weren't doing that.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it, really. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, basically. Oh, and then COVID. Oh, gosh.
Oh, you were in prison during COVID.
Yes.
Oh, go ahead. Keep going.
Okay. So COVID started happening, right? And we got put on lockdown. And I was not on the medical unit yet. I was still in general population.
Mm-hmm.
And girls were like, no one was allowed to go to work. The only people that were allowed to go to work were the kitchen workers and the commissary workers, right? But one of my cellmates was a commissary worker, and she would come back and she would bring back cleaner, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where she got it, none of my business, but she'd bring back cleaner, and we would scrub everything. We were scared, right? And then the George Floyd thing happened, and we were all watching that on TVs because that kind of happened at the same time, and that put like a very serious like issue in the prison. So we were not allowed out of our cells at all for like 3 months, right?
Yeah, because of George Floyd?
Because of George Floyd and COVID.
Okay. Oh, so you guys are scrubbing everything because you think COVID's coming for you, crawling up the walls, and you take care of that, and then the racial problem pops up, and then they keep you locked up until that dies down.
Right.
Gotcha.
And like some of the things, I never got COVID until I got out, which I thought was just wild. But so everyone that ended up getting COVID, they had to go to this like isolation unit, right? And like the stories they would come back telling just broke my heart, right? So some of the girls in there, they were sick. They couldn't get up. They like couldn't go to the bathroom. They were just like laying there. They couldn't move, right? And instead of like getting them actual medical care, they would just like put them in a room by themselves, and then they'd like open the little hatch and like kick their food in or like throw it on the floor, and like it was fucking terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And I think officially we had like 6 COVID deaths, but that was a lie.
You think there were more?
It depends, because how many people died of COVID and how many people died of like lack of medical care. So there was a lady in there. Her name was Martha, and she died for lack of medical care, right? She was my cellmate, and she had like a hernia,
mm-hmm.
and she'd been complaining about it for like 2 years, and they finally got sick of hearing her complain about it. So they sent her out to get a surgery, but the surgery went bad, and she literally died leaning over her toilet with coming out of her mouth.
Back in her cell?
Yes.
Jesus, what did...
And she had just went like to the nurse's station to be like, hey, I need help. And they sent her back to her room to die.
Wow. I mean, Jesus. I mean, what kind of medical care are you getting? You know what I mean? At that point,
right?
It's not
right.
It's not the same thing. Everybody.
Awful.
That's crazy. So you feel just generally lucky to be out of there alive?
Yes, absolutely. I am amazed that I made it.
Yeah. What about just like camaraderie in there? Was there any like human kindness between cellmates or anything like that?
It depended. Like people had friends. Just as a side note here, everyone in prison is gay.
Oh, okay.
I don't care what anyone wants to say. Everyone in prison is gay.
So at some point you look for comfort. You're like, I'm not gay, but I'm going to be while I'm here.
Right. And I didn't do that because I was like, I had like just found religion and I was like really strongly standing on that. But like there was a girl, I was like just talking to her like randomly and I was like, wow, your hair's really long. That's really pretty. And this fucking lady comes out of nowhere, like fucking appears behind her and she's like, are you talking to my girlfriend? I was like, no, bye. Sorry.
There's more stories you're saying. Gotcha.
So with that, a lot of people would like get in their like gay relationships, whether they were gay on the outside or not. I don't know. Basically, the ones of us that weren't being gay all kind of like ended up in the same spot anyway. So we were like being friends and like comrades and whatever.
Right.
But mostly everyone had a girlfriend. I ended up making this friend and she was awesome. She like always bought me food. She like that first time when I was going into DKA in the bathroom, she was like holding my hair up and like screaming at the officers to come help me. Like she was awesome.
Yeah. Whole thing's that's great that you found somebody, but there's nothing positive. I was going to ask you this one question. So kind of trying to take yourself out of yourself for a second, forget it's your life you're talking about. The entire process of being in prison and now not being in prison, did it do what society meant for it to do? Like, are you going to be a better citizen and not defraud the government again? Like, was it that much of a deterrent, or do you think was there another way to deter you than to have put you through this, is what I'm asking.
Honestly, it did its job. Because like I'm too scared now.
Right. You just would never do that again.
I don't know if there was another way. I'm sure there was. I just could not tell you what it was.
Because I'm going to tell you, like, I know for me, from a very young age, I've made all of my decisions based on not wanting to ever be in prison. I swear to you, like, I thought, like, what keeps me uninvolved with the police? What keeps me uninvolved with lawyers? You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be in that world. And so I'm not saying that I woke up one day and I was like, oh, I'd like to murder a hobo, but I'm not going to because I don't want to go to prison. Like, I didn't have those, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't have those general thoughts. But I will, like, if anything I'm doing, I'm like, I don't want to get in trouble. Like, I don't want that problem. You didn't have that because, I mean, for reasons we've already obviously discussed. But you couldn't find them in your adult years. You weren't surrounded by people who were going to help you find them. You've more or less been stuck in high school arguments of one kind or another for most of your life, even in prison when it's like, hey, get away from my girlfriend.
Yeah.
This is a group of people who have, for one reason or another, not grown up or not grown up well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. That's 100% true.
Okay. I take all those people in that. I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
That's okay. On the other side of it, there were a lot of people in there that like their whole goal when they got out was to go commit more crimes.
Yeah.
But there were also people that were like never f***ing again ever.
So they're bad people, right? And they're bad people who are not making mistakes that put them in prison. There's good people and there's good people making mistakes that put themselves in prison.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Jeez. All right.
Yeah.
And you're not gay until you don't have any other options. Then let's go. I got you. All right. Well, do you have anything else you want to tell me, or can I just go jump out the window behind me? My God.
I think what I would say more than anything is I really, really, really want there to be more transparency because like I was saying before, one of my cellmates died, like 4 of my cellmates died, like one after the other, you know?
In 2 years, 4 people who were just in your cell passed away?
Yeah.
And you didn't kill them. So what happened?
No, I did not. Just to clarify.
Okay, yeah.
No. One was Martha, who, like, something was wrong with her intestines. One lady, they said she died of COVID, but she had cancer. And the two together, like, killed her.
Okay.
One of them, I don't know what killed her. She just left one day and did not come back.
Uh-huh.
And then the last girl, she had gotten into a fight and then she ended up on the medical wing. because her fight was so bad. And then she had like bleeding inside of her brain, and she was never treated for it, and she died.
She got into a fight and she died from a head injury.
Yes.
Gotcha.
But it was something, again, everything was something that could have been prevented had someone like given any type of shit at all.
And do you think, has there ever been a time in your life where you saw the other side of it? Like, have you ever looked and thought, if I was the guard, I wouldn't do that. Like, it's just a pain. Like, it's constantly, it never stops happening. People get into a fight and they get a head injury and then they want to go like that kind of thing. Like, do you see their side of it or no?
I can't, because like I tried at the time, like I spent like months in solitary, just like watching these officers being terrible. And I couldn't imagine being an officer and either letting it happen or doing it. Gotcha. I could not imagine looking at someone in pain and being like, yeah, go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
I could not do it. That's not like in me as a person.
Yeah. I'm trying to decide how you mess up a hernia operation so bad that it's at the time of someone's death, their own feces is coming out of their mouth. That's pretty tough. You know what I mean?
Yep.
You got to mess up pretty good there.
And then like anyone that speaks up, anyone that says anything about the prison, like while you're inside, if you talk to a reporter, you get put in solitary. If you like are trying to talk to your family about what's happening, they cut your phone calls.
Gotcha.
Like, why is it like that if you're doing everything you're supposed to do?
Yeah. No, well, that's pretty obvious. So,
yeah.
Okay. Well, I'd like to say this to you, Stephanie, and be real sincere with you for a second.
Okay.
I want to say thank you. You are easily the 6th or 7th person who has told me that they were going to come on the show and tell me about being in prison with type 1 diabetes, and you're the first one that follows through. So thank you. I've been trying to do this for years.
Yeah. I know you reached out to me when I first got out, and I was not ready.
No, it's fine. Most of the time, though, it's because like either there's still legal things going on, or I imagine it's very difficult, or maybe you got to get back to boosting cars. I don't know. But like, like it's I appreciate that you spent so much time, because you reached out to me and you were like, hey, I can come on now. And I got to be honest with you, I was like, who is this even? It had been that long, and I want to thank you, because it's an important thing to talk about. I genuinely appreciate you taking the time. So let's just spend a couple of seconds now. You're doing well? Your kids are okay?
Yes, we are doing well. My kids are okay, and we're making it work.
And you met a guy who doesn't cheat on you, and you've had another baby, right?
I don't want to talk about that.
Okay. Wait, Jesus, he's not cheating on you, is he? All right, you have a new baby?
I do have a new baby. He is beautiful.
Are you married at the moment?
No, I am not.
No. Are you with the baby's father?
No, I am not.
I'm sorry. All right, Stephanie, listen. What are you doing for work?
It's okay.
It's okay?
It's okay. Like, when I got out of prison, I was very vulnerable. I was, like, so scared. I lost all my shit. My ex-husband went and had a baby with some other lady, and that was done. And it was, like, it was a really hard time, right? And then during this time, because I was so vulnerable, I kind of just latched onto the first thing that threw itself at me.
Yeah.
And it was like, I've never been in a violent relationship before this, but I was in a very, very violent relationship. And I am out of that. And me and my 3 kids, and we are okay. Like, I actually have some time to breathe and heal and be okay. And that's really why I reached out to you. I was like, I need to talk about this.
Yeah. I'm sorry that happened. I'm glad you're away from it.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Are you working, or how are you managing the rest of everything?
I was working like 3 weeks ago, and I applied to be at a hospital, to be like a patient care tech at a hospital.
Yeah.
And I'm having some trouble because the state needs to like send my information to the FBI, and I have an FBI number, so I know it's going to take a while, but hopefully when that comes back, they'll clear me to work.
I see. They got to get you cleared, and then you'll be able to take that job. Oh, that's great. Oh, I wish you a lot of luck with that. It'll be nice for you to help people too. After all you've seen happen to yourself and to other people, you'll be, I imagine, very compassionate in that position.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. All right, Stephanie, I can't thank you enough for doing this. Did we miss anything that we should have talked about?
I don't think so.
Okay. Did you ever make toilet wine?
No.
Good for you, Stephanie. Listen, through all this, you weren't a drinking or drug person, huh?
No, I wasn't. That actually amazes some people. But
I mean, it amazes me, but yeah. Did you ever think, like, I need an escape, or you didn't need the escape?
I didn't really need it. And I was like, so for me, it was always like, I've been in fight or flight mode for like 15 years, right? So in that thinking, I don't want to be out of my mind. I don't want to miss something should I need to move immediately, you know?
Yeah. I hear what you're saying. I mean, I think there's part of me that believes that you grew up so, like, in such a tough way that this terrible stuff isn't, I mean, it pushed you to cutting at one point, but that was a long time ago and you stopped it pretty quickly. Like, and so, yeah, I think you might just be ready to fight a war. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like you're one of those people who's like, I got discharged. I did my stint. I'm going to go back and do it again. Like you might be like, be careful of that, by the way, that you're not always looking for problems because you're good at dealing with them. Yeah.
I have thought of that. I have.
Yeah. You got to make sure that you're not one of those people who's more comfortable when everything's upside down.
Right. Yes.
Go find a way to be happy with boring. You know what I mean? All right.
Absolutely.
Well, listen, if you can stop your children from being on the path that you were put on, I would call your life a really great use of your time. You know what I mean?
Thank you. Yeah.
Is that how you think of it? Do you think like I have to raise these kids in a way that isn't going to put them in the position I was in?
I do, actually. I'm like, everything I do is constantly like, how is this going to affect them? How are they going to take this? How is this going to go when they're 30? Yeah. And I think because of that, I'm doing really well.
Good for you. Well, all right. Well, congratulations on, I don't know, somehow like being here to be able to do this. And I hope having this conversation was helpful for you.
Yes.
Great. Hold on one second for me. A huge thanks to Touched by Type 1 for sponsoring this episode of the Juicebox Podcast. Check them out on their website, touchedbytype1.org, or on Facebook and Instagram. You can use the same continuous glucose monitor that Arden uses. All you have to do is go to Dexcom.com/juicebox and get started today. That's right, the Dexcom G7 is sponsoring this episode of the Juicebox Podcast. Jalen is an incredible example of what so many experience living with diabetes. You show up for yourself and others every day, never letting diabetes define you. And that is what the Medtronic Champion community is all about. Each of us is strong, and together we're even stronger. To hear more stories from the Medtronic Champion community or to share your own story, visit medtronicdiabetes.com/juicebox and look out online for the hashtag Medtronic Champion. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoy my full conversation with Jalen coming up in just a moment. If you're living with type 1 diabetes, the After Dark collection from the Juicebox Podcast is the only place to hear the stories that no one else talks about. From drugs to depression, self-harm, trauma, addiction, and so much more. Go to juiceboxpodcast.com, up in the menu, and click on After Dark. There you'll see a full list of all of the After Dark episodes. Thanks for hanging out until the end. Now you're going to hear my entire conversation with Jalen. Don't forget medtronicdiabetes.com/juicebox or the hashtag Medtronic Champion on your favorite social media platform.
My name is Jalen Mayfield. I am 29 years old. I live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where I am originally from Waynesboro, Mississippi. So I've kind of traveled all over. I've just landed here in the Midwest and haven't left since.
Nice. How old were you when you were diagnosed with type 1 diabetes?
I was 14 years old when I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes.
15 years ago. Wow.
Yes.
Okay. 14 years old. What are you like? Do you remember what grade you were in?
I actually do, because we have like an 8th grade promotion. So I had just had 8th grade promotion. So I was going straight into high school. So it was a summer heading into high school.
Was that particularly difficult going into high school with this new thing?
It was unimaginable. You know, I missed my entire summer. So I was going to a brand new school with, our community. We brought 3 different schools together. So I was around a bunch of new people that I had not been going to school with. So it was hard trying to balance that while also explaining to people what type 1 diabetes was.
Did you even know, or were you just learning at the same time?
I honestly was learning at the same time. My hometown did not have an endocrinologist. So I was traveling almost over an hour to the nearest, pediatrician, like endocrinologist for children. So, outside of that, I didn't have any type of support in my hometown.
Was there any expectation of diabetes? Does somebody else in your family have type 1?
No, I was the first one to have type 1 in my family.
And do you have children now?
I do not.
No. Do you think you will one day?
Still thinking about it, but right now I've just been traveling, focusing on my career and myself. So
what do you do? What's your career?
Yeah, so I am a marketing leasing specialist for a student housing company. So we oversee about 90 properties throughout the US. So I've been working for them for about 8 years now.
And you get to travel a lot in that job?
Yes, I experience a lot of travel. It's fun, but also difficult, especially with all your type 1 diabetes supplies and all your electronics. So it's a bit of a hassle sometimes.
Mm-hmm. What do you find that you absolutely need with you while you're traveling, diabetes-wise?
I have learned my biggest thing I need is some type of glucose. I have experienced lows, whether that's on a flight, traveling, walking through the airport. And I used to always experience just being nervous to ask for some type of snack or anything. So I felt like I needed to always have something on me, and that has made my travel a lot easier.
Okay. So growing up in this small town, what was your initial challenge during diagnosis, and what other challenges did you find along the way?
Yeah, I think the initial one, I felt isolated. I had no one to talk to that it was experiencing what I was going through. People would say, oh, I know this is like hard for you, but I was like, you really don't. Like, I just felt lonely. I didn't know, people were watching everything I did. It was like, you can't eat this, you can't eat that. I felt like all of my childhood had been, I don't even remember what it was like for life before diabetes at this point, because I felt like that's the only thing I could focus on was trying to do a life with type 1 diabetes.
When you found yourself misunderstood, did you try to explain to people, or did you find it easier just to stay private?
I just held back. I didn't really like talking about it. It felt like it was just a repeating record where I was saying things and people weren't understanding it. And I also was still in the process of learning it. So I just, kept it to myself, didn't really talk about it unless I absolutely had to.
Did you eventually find people in real life that you could confide in?
I think I never really got the experience until after getting to college. And then once I graduated college and moving to an even bigger town, that's where I finally found those people where I was like, okay, there's a lot of other people that have type 1 diabetes. And, there's a community out there which I had never experienced before.
Is college where you met somebody with diabetes for the first time, or just where you met more people with different ways of thinking?
So I met my first person with diabetes actually my freshman year of high school. There was only one other person, and he had it since he was a kid, like young, since we were like maybe born. Mm-hmm. Or like right after that time frame. So that was the only other person I knew until I got to college and I started meeting other people. I was a member of the band and I was an RA. So I was like, okay, there's a small handful of people also at my university. But then once I moved to St. Louis, and a lot of my friends I met were like med students and they were young professionals. And that's where I started really getting involved with one of my really close friends to this day. He was also type 1 diabetic. And I was like, that's who introduced me to all these different types of communities and technologies, and which is really what helped jumpstart my learning more with type 1 diabetes.
Do you think, there was that one person in high school, but you were young. Do you really think you were ready to build a relationship and around diabetes, or did you even know the reason why that would be important at the time?
I didn't. I honestly didn't think about it. I just was like, oh, there's another person in my class that's kind of going through the same thing as I am, but they've also had it a lot longer than I have. So they kind of got it down. They don't really talk about it. And I was like, well, I don't really have much to connect with them. Connect with them on.
Yeah. No. So now once your world expands as far as different people, different backgrounds, different places in college, you see the need to connect in real life, but there's still only a few people, but there's still value in that, right?
Correct.
What do you think that value was at the time?
I think it was just what making me feel like I was just a normal person. I just wanted that. And I needed to know that, like, there was other people out there with type 1 diabetes experiencing the same type of, thoughts that I was having.
When were you first introduced to the Medtronic Champions community?
Yeah. So about 2 years ago, I was, becoming more, I was looking around and I stumbled upon the Medtronic community and I was like, this is something I really, really, I kind of need. I said, all throughout these years, I was, afraid to show my pump. I would wear long sleeves, like didn't want people to see my CGMs because I didn't want people to ask me questions. And, I just felt so uncomfortable. And then I noticed seeing these people really in the Medtronic community, they embraced it. You could see them. They weren't afraid to show it. And that was something I was really looking forward to.
How is it knowing that your diabetes technology is such an important part of your health and your care and having to hide it? What did it feel like to have to hide that diabetes technology, and how did it feel to be able to kind of let it go?
I refused to go anywhere. And I would run to the bathroom. I just didn't want to do it in public because I felt like people were watching me. And that was just one of the hardest things I was trying to overcome. I was fresh out of college, going into the young professional world. So, going out on work events and things like that, I just didn't think to have it out because I was so afraid. But then once I did start, embracing it and showing it, that's when the curiosity came. And it was actually genuine questions and people wanting to know more about the equipment that I'm on and how does this work and what does this mean and things like that, which it kind of inspired me because I was like, okay, people actually do want to understand what I'm experiencing with type 1 diabetes.
What did you experience when the internet came into play and now suddenly as easy as a hashtag and you can meet all these other people who are living with diabetes as well? Can you tell me how that is either different or valuable, I guess, compared to meeting a few people in real life?
Absolutely. I think if you look back from when I was first diagnosed to now, I would have never thought of searching anything for someone with type 1 diabetes. And now it's like, it's all I see. You can easily search Medtronic Champions and you see people that pop up and you're like, wow, look at all this content. And I think that's something that kind of just motivates me, and which is how I've kind of came out of my shell and started embracing more and posting more on my social media about how I live with type 1 diabetes. And I think that's something that I hope can inspire everyone else.
What was it like having more personal, intimate relationships in college with type 1?
I think it was kind of hard to explain, just for example, no one really understands what a low is. And I think that was a very hard thing for me to explain. It can happen in any moment and I'm sweating. I'm just really not all there. And I'm trying to explain hey, this is what's going on. I need your help. And I think that was something that was hard for me to, I did talk to people about it. So when this happened, they were like, oh, what's going on with you? I'm like, I'm actually a type 1 diabetic. Yeah. This is what's going on. I need your help.
What about once you've had an experience like that in front of someone, was it always bonding, or did it ever have people kind of step back and be maybe more, leery of your relationship?
After I would tell someone I had type 1 diabetes after some type of event or anything, they were kind of more upset with me that I didn't tell them up front. Because they were like, I care about you as a person. I would have loved to know this about you. It's not anything you should have to hide from me. And I think that was a lot of the realization that I was going through with a lot of people.
Okay. Let me ask you this. So now we talked about what it was like to be low and to have that more kind of emergent situation. But what about when your blood sugar's been high or stubborn and you're not thinking correctly, but it's not as obvious, maybe to you or to them?
Yeah. So I go through my same experiences when I have high blood sugars. I can tell from my coworkers, for example, I didn't really talk to, I'll backtrack. When I visit multiple sites for work, I usually don't announce it. And so sometimes I'm working throughout the day. I might have snacked, forgot to take some insulin, and my blood sugar is running high. And I'm a little bit more irritable. I'm all over the place. And I'm like, let me stop. Hey, guys, I need to take some insulin. I'm sorry, I didn't tell you guys I'm a diabetic. So you may be wondering why I'm kind of just a little bit snippy, so I like to make sure I do that now going forward, because that's something I noticed, and it was kind of hindering me in my career because I was, getting irritable because I'm working nonstop and I'm forgetting to take a step back and focus on my diabetes.
Right. Hey, with the advent of new technology like Medtronic CGM and other diabetes technology, can you tell me how that's improved your life and those interactions with people?
Yeah, I feel confident knowing that it's working in the background. As someone, and I've always advocated said it, I have been someone that's really bad with counting my carbs. So sometimes I kind of undershoot it because I'm scared, but it allows me to just know that, hey, it's got my back if I forget something. And I think that allows me to have a quick lunch, and then I'm able to get back into the work day, because it's such a fast-paced industry that I work in. So sometimes it is easy to forget. And so I love that I have that system that's keeping track of everything for me.
Let me ask you one last question. When you have interactions online with other people who have type 1 diabetes, what social media do you find the most valuable for you personally? Like, what platforms do you see the most people and have the most good interactions on?
Yeah, I've had tremendous interactions on Instagram. That's where I've kind of seen a lot of other diabetics reach out to me and ask me questions. I've commented like, hey, you're experiencing this too. But I've recently also been seeing TikToks and, finding on that side of it. I didn't, see the videos and the fun videos. And I'm like, I would love to do stuff like that, but I just never have the courage. So I'm seeing people make like just the fun engagement videos now, which I love, really bringing that awareness to diabetes.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting? Maybe you don't know this, but there's some sort of an age cutoff somewhere where there is an entire world of people with type 1 diabetes existing on Facebook that don't go into TikTok or Instagram and vice versa.
Yeah.
And I do think it's pretty broken down by, when that platform was most popular for those people by age. But your younger people, I'm acting like I'm 100 years old, but younger people seem to enjoy video more.
Yes, I think it's just because it's something you see. And so it's like, and I think the one thing, and obviously it's a big stereotype around diabetes, is you don't look like you have diabetes. And that's something I always faced. And so when I see other people that are just, normal, everyday people, and I'm like, they have type 1 diabetes just like me. They're literally living their life, having fun. That's just something you want to see it, because you don't get to see people living their everyday lives with diabetes. And I think that's something I've really enjoyed.
Yeah. What are your health goals? When you go to the endocrinologist and you make a plan for the next few months, what are you hoping to achieve, and where do you struggle and where do you see your successes?
I'll be honest, I was not someone who was as, involved in my diabetes. I wasn't really focused on my health. And that was something that, you go into an endocrinologist and you get these results back and it's not what you want to hear. It makes you nervous. It makes you scared. And so I personally, for myself, I was like, this is my chance to change. I know there's people that are living just like me, everyday lives, and they can keep their A1Cs and their blood sugars under control. How can I do this? So I go in with, I would like to see it down a certain number of points each time. I would love for my doctor to be like, hey, I see you're entering your carbs. I see you're not having lows. You're not running high too often. That's my goal. And I've been seeing that. And that's what motivates me every time I go to the endocrinologist, where I don't dread going. It's like an exciting visit for me.
So you like to set a goal for yourself and then for someone to acknowledge it, to give you kind of that energy to keep going for the next goal.
Yeah, I feel as a type 1 diabetic, for me, and it's a lot to balance. It's a hard journey.
Yeah.
And so I want someone, when I go in, I want to be able to know like, hey, I see what you're doing. Let's work together to do this. You don't want to be put down like, you're doing horrible. It's not going to motivate you, because you're already fighting a tough battle.
Right.
So just having that motivation and acknowledging the goods and also how we can improve, that's what really has been the game changer for me in the past 2 years.
Jalen, I appreciate you spending this time with me. This was terrific. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
If you enjoyed Jalen's story, check out medtronicdiabetes.com/juicebox. The episode you just heard was professionally edited by Wrong Way Recording. wrongwayrecording.com.